Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different style of video. I'm going to be showing you how to switch an SSD from a laptop into a different SSD. So yeah, that's essentially what the video is going to be like today. There won't be a lot of talking, it's mainly just going to be showing, and yeah, I hope the video is useful. So first thing we're going to need is a bunch of screwdrivers. I have them all set up here. I have one big screwdriver as well, just in case that's needed. I have the SSD I want to switch to. The SSD I want to remove is already in the computer. And I have a different screwdriver in case I need to use some of those heads over there. I also have a little box here I'm going to be using to leave all the screws that I'm not going to be using at the moment or anything else of that matter. So I'm going to leave this right over here, just in case that's necessary. So to begin, we're going to be removing these 4 screws we can see here. I'm going to be using my small screwdriver in this case. There we go. We have our first screw. I'm going to be leaving that right over here. Here goes second screw. Third screw. And a fourth one. Something that's important to consider when doing this process is I would suggest to try to separate the screws as much as possible without going too crazy with it. So, as you may be able to notice here, the 2 screws I screwed out first are slightly longer than the 2 screws I screwed out second. So that's very important because when you're putting it back, if the screws are not the exact one that's necessary, you could damage the components of the computer or laptop you're trying to open. So as much as possible, try to separate the screws that you're interacting with. So as you can see here, I have the small screws that go on the bottom, so the closest to me, and then the 2 on the top are the furthest away from me. Now we're going to be leaving our friend over here, and instead we're going to be grabbing one of the flat ones, because this part is going to be a little bit scary, but we're going to try to open this thing by lodging a screwdriver in there and trying to get it to open. So there we go, I got a little bit of connection there. And there we go. Got another one on that side. Alright. If it's your first time doing it, I highly suggest to take your time when doing this step, as it's one of the most easy to mess up and has the least amount of like the first time you're doing it, you really don't know how deep you should put the screwdriver in or how much force you should be applying. So I highly suggest being very careful when doing this step, especially if it's your first time. As I have done this a few times, I am now a little bit more able to tell how much force I'm supposed to apply and when I'm supposed to apply it. Alright, now that we have this, put a little bit more force in. Always being very careful to not hit any of the components or do anything that feels wrong. So there we go. I'm going to move this over here slightly. So here we go. This is the cover. We're going to avoid touching this. This is one of the reasons why I'm wearing gloves right now. We want to avoid touching any of these parts, since if we do touch them, we will be likely leaving some grease. So if you can notice, I'm not sure, there's already some grease on certain parts of this, as you can see, from people touching it, like in the building process or any part of the process. They're likely touching it, which could cause problems, such as the heat could get stuck there. It could increase the temperatures of your laptop, etc., etc. Alright, once we're here, we're in a good position. I'm going to quickly go through all the components here so you can get a good idea of what's going on. So first we can see our SSD. What we're looking for is right here under this metal plating. This is all the battery, since the battery is a pretty big part of the laptops. Here we have our two speakers on each side, and then under this part of the battery is our touchpad. We also have some other things. For example, I believe this could be, for example, the RAM. I'm not too certain though. I don't quite know where it is. This could also be like the Wi-Fi chip that is also required. Then there is two fans here. These fans are really important because they keep the CPU cool. So this is likely where the CPU is, around this area, since these two fans are very important to keep the CPU and likely integrated GPU inside as well. So here's probably where the GPU and CPU are, more or less. And yeah, the giveaway is the fact that the fans go into that, so it shows that it's trying to cool it down. So now that we have a little overview of each part, let's start switching the parts that we're interested in. So for example, we're trying to fix the SSD here, or replace it for that matter. So we're going to be going back to our classic small star screwdriver, and we're going to try to unscrew this screw right here. Alright. Right, now that we've succeeded, we will take away the screw, and we will leave it right there, as we did for the rest of our screws. Now we can use the flat one again, or our fingers, to dismantle or dismount this part right here. There we go. I'm going to be leaving this right there. Alright. Now we have access finally to our SSD. So this is going to be very simple. All we're going to do is take our screwdriver again, or our fingers, making sure to not touch too much or break anything. And we're going to try to remove the SSD. You might need to wiggle it slightly. Just make sure to do it with a lot of care and avoid touching any unnecessary parts. So in this, the special parts that we should not be touching is the port right here and the connection that will be taking place in the SSD. So this part right here and this part right here. Alright, we're going to be leaving this on the side again. And we're going to be taking our new or temporary / replacement SSD. We're going to make sure the way that we remove that one, so as we could see, there was the little pin on this side, and then there was the big pin on that side. So we're going to just be copying that right here. If you're not sure, you can look inside of the connector and you will see that there's one side with a small pin, one side with a big pin, and we're just going to be sliding it that same way. The reason they do this is obviously so that people do not get mixed up when doing it, and they do it the right way and the right orientation. so you don't really have to worry about the orientation since it's already pretty much set up for you. So as you can see, putting it at this angle is going to be a little bit hard, so we're just going to be instead putting it like that, not preferably at an incline. So now we're just going to push it in to the slot right until the screw is able to go back in. There we go. So it will require a little bit of pushing, and it might be a little bit until you hear a little click or until it feels like it fits right. Just keep pushing a little bit. So it should neatly fit into this part here with a little circle, and you should be able to easily put back the screw which we just removed. Now keep in mind, we cannot put this screw back in yet. We need to wait a second and make sure we put the plate on top first. So once we've put in the SSD, we're going to be putting back this plate. Make sure to align the plate with the circle, as that is the most important part. Alright. There we go. You can push the plate slightly forwards or backwards with another screwdriver if necessary. That's not a problem. Just make sure to not put too much force. And now we're going to put back the screw inside. This might be a little bit of a difficult process, but really should not be that hard. Now to tighten it, just make sure, consider what you're going to be doing in the future. So if you're going to remove this in the future or near future, just make sure to not put it too tight. Just put it how it should be. And also something that's very important that I messed up the first time I did this is try not to put too much pressure or too much force when putting or removing the screw. Since if you put too much force, you could over twist the screw and just completely mess up the star or face at the very top. So if you have a star and then you just twist it too much, it might just jumble all up and turn into a circle, and we do not want that, because then the screw is either going to be stuck inside the hole, or you will not be able to put it back in the hole. So it is very important to use the least amount of force necessary when screwing and unscrewing. Of course, if the screws that you have are very high quality, then it should not be a problem. But yeah, it all depends on the type of screws you have and how much force you're putting in. So I do not suggest using a screwdriver unless it is totally necessary and the screws are just not coming off and a lot of force is needed. So now that we have that back in, just try to remember, maybe record a video of yourself doing it, or make it in a way where you're going to remember the steps you did and the way you did it. So if I were to put this like this again, I would run into a problem because this is not the way that it was put initially. I will have to put it like this. So let's just make sure that we're doing this properly. The way that we did it initially is putting the back first, and then we made our way to the front. So we're just going to copy that procedure as we did in the start. So I'd say that the front is pretty well placed at the moment. Don't see too many problems with it. So I'm going to start putting the back. This might be a little bit of a tedious task, and it's probably the most annoying part of opening a laptop, since you need to put it exactly as it was, and if you mess up, this could cause some potential problems. So it is the most frustrating part of this build or this task, but it should be able to be done rather easily after just try and error for a few minutes. Just again, make sure to not put too much pressure. Make sure everything just looks about right once you're done. We also don't want to put too much pressure because some of the latches or hinges might break, which means we would not be allowed to, or able to for that matter, put it back in again, or it might break off easily. Just double check that everything is placed properly by the end, so that it is not easy for it to fall off. Alright, so now it seems to be just fine. So we're going to flip it over again, and we're going to be finalizing by adding the screws, which we removed at the beginning. Alright, this one seems to be struggling a little bit, so we're going to help it out. There we go. Alright. So just so we can recall again, the two screws that were closest to me over there were the two that went on this side, and the two that were in the box are going for that side. So that's a good way to remember where they're supposed to go. Just put them in a different place, but with the correct orientation and placement. So there we go. First one's done. Now let's go on to this one. This one's also fighting a little bit. There we go. Just most important thing is to be patient. As you can see, the magnets from the screwdriver and the computer are messing a little bit with the screws, or you could say screwing with the screws, which makes it a little bit harder to put into the correct holes. There we go. Alright. But as I said, just with a little bit of patience, it should not be that hard. There we go. These ones should be a little bit easier, as they are slightly longer, which means that they can easily fit into the slots, and then you can just put a little bit of pressure to get them correctly placed. And there we go. And there we go. This should be it now. It's really not that difficult of a process. Might look difficult from the outside, but yeah, it's really simple. So now we have our computer finally finalized, and just if in case the SSD still works and we're just temporarily switching them around, I highly suggest that you keep the other SSD in a safe spot, such as in this box where I bought the other SSD. So I do suggest you save SSD boxes for this very reason, as they can be quite useful in the future. There it is. So that's a good place to save that other SSD. And now this should be it. The computer should simply just work at this point. Shouldn't be any issues SSD wise, considering the other SSD is new. So I'm just going to be now double checking that it does actually work. So the computer already had power. I highly suggest, if you can remove all the power from your computer, to do so before opening it. But in my case, I couldn't do that, so I just left it with power. And there we go, the computer's opened. So now it's asking me to finish updating. And I've already installed Windows 10 on this version, and it works just fine. So there we go. As you can see, it's a perfectly working version of Windows in a completely new SSD. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I hope that you could find it useful. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. See ya.